Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Shut Up and Enjoy with your host, Jedi Master Chris Riley, joined by my fellow council member, Jedi Master Dante Howard.
Hello, hello.
We will be recording on and reviewing Loki Season 2, Episode 4. And what?
The reset of the MCU, I think, is what we experienced last night.
Yeah, what?
Well, I guess let me start by doing my world famous recap of the series, and pardon me as I turn my gaze to it.
That's brought to you by ChatGPT.
Miss Minutes reveals that Renslayer was once he who remains his partner and commander of his army before he ordered her memories erased along with everyone else's. As the temporal loom reaches catastrophic failure, Loki and his allies attempt to use Timely and OB's throughput multiplier, which I did not know that's what he was saying the whole time. Until I started reading the caption, like, what exactly is he saying? To fix it, but Renslayer, Miss Minutes, and Wolf attempt to thwart them to take the TVA for themselves, kidnapping Timely, pruning D90, and killing Dox and her men when they refuse to join them.
Well, not just killing
Yeah.
Dox and her men. Holy crap. That was Empire if R2 didn't shut down the trash compactor.
100%.
Yeah.
In the midst of the conflict, Loki encounters his time-slipping self and prunes him. OB deactivates Miss Minutes, and the dampeners preventing Sylvie from using her magic, enabling Sylvie to enchant Wolf, who prunes Renslayer. Timely is able to unlock the temporal loom, but the temporal radiation spaghettifies and disintegrates him before he can launch the throughput multiplier. The temporal loom explodes, and everyone is engulfed in the blast wave as it approaches the TVA.
So a quick bullet point of that recap was trash compactor plus Mr. Fantastic in Multiverse of Madness equals Thanos on a multiversal I don't like this level. By the way, spoiler alert going forward.
I think all of our fans know at this point.
If this is your first episode, first of all, why? Second of all, welcome. Glad
welcome
to
in. Come back and tell a friend.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, when I know we do this out of order, we just spitball as we go through. So understand that if this is your first time. But I gotta tell you, when Timely went through that door and immediately spaghettified, I audibly chuckled. It was pretty damn funny.
You chuckled.
Yes.
What about it was funny?
I think it was because they were. I'm so mean, right? I'm heartless. Because they went through all of this to get to this point. And boom, as soon as the doors opened and he stepped foot in there, he was gone. He was a goner, straight off the top.
I thought it was interesting that they had him gone the second he stepped through versus the usual Marvel buildup of like the hero's starting to fight the good fight. You at least let him get in the ring before you kneecap a bitch. And they did not only not let him get in the ring, they didn't even let him walk down the aisle to the ring. They put two in the hat before the audience even saw who he was.
Yep.
Which I thought, I was surprised. I figured, he was gonna they were gonna off him. Like I figured that.
Right.
But I wondered, I at least thought they might have let him get to it and maybe like a put the put the thing in and then die and save the day. So it was very almost un-Disney like where you don't get that happy ending. It was more Endgame like than or Infinity War like than Endgame like.
I appreciate that and I like that because it was something that caught you, caught us, caught everyone off guard in that moment. And that might be another reason why I chuckled because it was I like you was thinking the same thing. All right, so how close is he going to get this throughput multiplier into the machine, and then we'll start to see perhaps everything's going to happen and be good, but then no, but we didn't even get any of that. It was just straight off the top. You're gone.
Or they pushed time through timely and not timely through time, to
Yeah.
quote Endgame of you push time through Scott and not Scott through time, right? We turned him into a baby.
I pee my pants.
I don't know if that was old me or young me or
Both.
me.
I love it.
Yeah, it was there was a lot that happened from the start of seeing the darker side of He Who Remains and having Renslayer realizing that she was really just a pawn
Mhm.
and the one to do all the hard work while the project manager sits in his ivory tower and
Get all
directs
the
all
credit.
the peons. Not that we know about that.
I never heard that. Never see that before.
Like it was it was cool how they started with that, where
Yeah.
it was immediately right where they picked up from episode 3, where Miss Minutes was, I have a secret to tell you, and it's gonna make you mad.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then it set Renslayer off to become almost the new He Who Remains.
Right. Right.
But because she didn't have the full understanding of the multiversal war at this time, because her memories were wiped, um, it didn't go in her favor.
That we know of. But again, all
Also being pruned, she just gets put back where what's
alliances and the
yeah,
void.
I want to say Abeloth, but that's because my mind is still stuck on Ahsoka.
Yeah. It's a little something different. A little different.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, that was Renslayer went through a lot this episode.
She did. All the emotions. And I think, getting that information, getting that secret, and knowing what happened to her and how they were supposed to be partners at the end of time. And thinking back to what happened last week when she was trying to help out Victor Timely and he threw her off the boat. We'll cut it down.
Because we're not partners.
Right. And and I think so all of that is kind of sort of going through her head.
Mhm.
And then I I think it was a very good point for them to put in there that to her it's only been a couple days since all the other stuff from season 1 happened. So all this is still going through her head. She found out that the timekeepers were fake and all this stuff that she was doing may not have been the greatest thing to do or the best thing to do. Sylvie was after her ass, so it was a lot has been going on here on these last couple days.
So what's the time frame from episode 1 to now? And I mean episode 1. Like Loki was taken from the 2012 Mongolia to now.
Well, as we know, time works differently here in the TBA.
I walked into that one head first.
See, yeah, you're spaghetti fied.
That was a glass door going out to a summer porch, and I walked right into that pane of glass. On
That
the
but
sacred timeline,
I think if we want to look at time in our time, how long has it been? It couldn't possibly have been. It couldn't possibly have been that long. If Renslayer is saying it's been a couple days for her from her leaving at the end of season one, and then if we look back at what went down in season one, we're talking maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks that all of this has happened. For them, it's only been that long. But of course, we know as in the MCU, it's been, I don't know,
I mean, yeah,
12,
you're
12 years at this point.
you're running through times like they went back to Pompeii and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
But from Loki's point of view, how long has it been since he was first introduced to the TVA?
I think maybe 2 weeks. So not long at all.
It's a lot of character development for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, he's been through a lot of shit in that 2 weeks.
Yeah. I did chuckle a little bit when I saw when Obi was like, it's a snake eating its tail. It's an Ouroboros. I was like,
He said the thing.
he said the thing. He said the thing. Okay, so we come back, we start this episode with minutes talking to Renslayer,
Hmm.
and then we flash into all hell breaking loose in the TVA and Victor Timely coming through, weirdly enough, without Loki immediately right behind him,
Yes.
which
That.
was a little awkward for scene placement. Like, I know they made that choice more along the reasoning for cinematography than plot continuity,
Hmm.
but it was weird how it was the same door back in the 1800s that Timely and Loki and Mobius, excuse me, walked through.
Right.
But then they get placed in two different parts of the TVA and minutes apart. So Timely has time to like explore a little bit.
I think a lot of that is just like you said, it has to do with cinematography, it has to do with the writing and things being just a little bit awkward. And I think we're
It
supposed to
just
look past
takes me out of the scene, and
that.
that's why this is the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
If Feige was in charge and they had time to do it all, then this would never have
Kathleen Kennedy just needs to be fired.
happened. Phase five nonsense. I tell you, it's the worst.
These young whippersnappers in their comics. Um, so I thought that was a little weird, and whether it was for like artistic or trying to focus more on like Victor Timely trying to do his thing, it was a little clunky to me in that part, and then Sylvie suddenly showing up
Right.
nowhere, like she was gonna off Renslayer and not and yes, and that whole how they all come together was weird.
Yes. Yes. And there's probably no explanation for it other than it happened. Move on.
Shut up and enjoy.
That's right. That's right.
Um, After that, we got a little bit of chicken and the egg hashing out where Victor Timely then meets Obi or Boris, who and Obi meets Victor Timely, and it's I based my schematics off of your plans, you based them off of mine, I based them off of yours, and we actually based our plans off of each other at the same time, but at different points of time and space-time continuum.
It is fascinating how all that happened, how it all came together. And I enjoyed it, especially like when they each wanted to sign each other's manual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. By the way, Patreon coming soon. If you want a signed autograph copy of your TVA manual, um, yeah, that was really cool how they did that. And one thing I said to the coworker who I was telling you about beforehand, before we started recording, was just stop thinking about the actual logic
Yep.
of it and just let it
Just let
do
it
it.
wash over you.
Just yes, just shut up and enjoy.
Right, right.
And enjoy.
Yeah, and just a quick aside to that is, a lot of times we like to think of things in our terms and our reality, but I mean, they do magic and shit. They have portals that open up and take you to the past and the present and so forth. Just
Which
let it rock.
which I liked that. I think that was a almost like 3.5 wall break last episode when they're looking at the two statues of the Norse gods,
Yep.
and Mobius is like, I honestly forget that you're one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're a god. You're one of them.
Yes.
And then we
Yes.
see that play a little bit out in this episode where Sylvie's developing more of a humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so what are you saying? We can't do this? We can't play God? Like you're telling us that we have to play God or something over free will and watch all these people? And Loki's like, yeah, we
We
are
are gods.
gods.
That's right.
We literally are gods. Yes, we are allowed to do that.
We gotta do it
Yeah.
at this point.
And I thought that was a cool kind of like bringing things back into context because as they blow up, it's almost like a breathing thing where you're building up and you have Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, and Thor 1, 2, and 3, and Captain America 1, 2, and 3, and leading to Infinity War. And then Endgame happens and Thanos goes, and it's the exhale. Then
Mhm.
you have Scarlet Witch, and you have Multiverse of Madness, and you have Loki. But we are God, and it's almost a constant living, breathing like trend that you see with all
Yeah.
of these things. And I think that really helps to bring back and reground everything that you're seeing and keep it in a perspective. So when a threat comes, you actually feel like at the end of this episode, you saw the fear in Loki's eyes. You saw the fear in Sylvie's eyes. You felt that on an emotional level. And it wasn't just, this is happening and God knows where and God knows when and all of this stuff. And you have no actual connection to it because it's on such an incomprehensible scale. I think they do a really good job of making sure that that is all tied together.
Yes. Yes. It's been very good writing this year with this series. And that even goes back to last season as well. This is very tightly done series, very compartmentalized, which we're all very happy about. So we don't have to worry about, what's coming next or how does this fit into the other thing or that thing. All the information that we need for this series is in this series and all together. So it really works out well.
So where do you think this series is trying to go? I still think you're right from last week when you said we probably won't see another Kang variant.
Yes, I still think that's true. Where it goes from here, things always kind of get a little funky when we've all seen the trailers. We know that some scenes that are in the trailers haven't been seen yet, so you can kind of know that okay, they didn't all die. We know that there's going to be a jet ski here. There's going to be a scene in a prison there. So we know some different things are happening. what is the point of this show? What is this show trying to tell us? It's kind of like He Who Remains told us at the end of last season, I'm just going to end up right back here anyways. So it's going to reset the timeline. Everything that happened on the original timeline is still going to happen. But I also think that now that there's been a big explosion, all the other infinite timelines are now going to end up intermingling. And that might be what we saw at the Quantumania post credit scene when all the Kang, the Council of Kangs, were all in that one arena together. That may have been what we saw there, as far as all the timelines coming together, all the variants coming together. That's what this series is trying to show us. That's what's coming. That's what's happening. That is the beginning of the multiverse war.
So, how do you think the other characters that are still with us going to play into it? Arguably, we have Spider-Man, but contract and Sony being Sony, whatever, which they're not looking too great. Had another cyber breach a few weeks ago.
Awesome.
We have Doctor Strange, who's off with Cleo, fighting whatever Dormammu dimension is going on. And by the way, give me all of the credit for coming up with Cleo right off the spot, pulling that out of absolute thin air. We have maybe Scarlet Witch. We don't kind of entirely 100%, maybe sort of kind of know, non-confirmed yet. Like who's, if the call goes up, who's answering?
And what call are you talking about?
A multiversal war that happens to always happen in New York City.
Well, Hawkeye's there, right? Kate Bishop. But I think there won't be a call until after the Kangs battle it out. The Kangs and
So you,
their
you think we're going to see a
their
movie?
armies.
You think we're going to see a movie where the cast lineup is Jonathan Majors as 616 Kang, Jonathan Majors as 28 Kang, Jonathan Majors as 420 Kang, Jonathan Majors as Ancient Egypt Kang.
Now, the what would be interesting is if battle plays out off screen, but we end up with the three that we saw at the end of Quantumania,
Mm-hmm.
He Who Remains, and Kang, the actual Kang. So we have those five
Nathaniel
characters.
Richards.
What's that?
Nathaniel Richards Kang.
No, that's comics. We're talking. We're talking MCU.
They could still create that though. There's still space for, if they want to do Kang Kang, they could still create him as.
Well, that's true because what I always thought was funny, just to jump off of that five, but bring me back to that five. Just to jump off of that real quick, one thing that was said by that character in Quantumania, which I always thought was interesting, when Janet touched the his motor, which is actually in this series now. That's the throughput. That's the throughput multiplier.
Yeah.
when she touched that and saw his memories and saw everything that he did, she asked him, "Who is Kang?" And he replied with, "Kang is who I need to become." He never said he was.
Yeah.
She called him that, then everybody called him that. Kind of like, when Namor came up and he was like, "Hey, this is my name. Kukulkan is my name. My enemies call me Namor," and everybody started calling him Namor. Like, well, fuck, you didn't say you're my enemy now. I told you what my name is.
There's a parrot that's specifically kind of a time paradox. Um, I can't remember what it is. There's the bootstrap paradox,
Yes.
which is fan of Beethoven, loves Beethoven, who's also a time traveler, wants to go back and meet Beethoven, meet his hero, travels back in time. Nobody's heard of him. Nobody's heard of Beethoven. Not even his family has heard of Beethoven. Nobody knows who he is. But what turns out is he then writes the music. So the time traveler himself becomes Beethoven. So he in the future can become a fan of Beethoven. So which came first, Kang or the Conqueror?
Right.
Which came first, Oro or the Boris?
So that's kind of sort of what we're talking about here. So let's get back to the five.
Yes, the
So
five.
we got those five. Now, if each one of those five has their own army, perhaps those armies are the characters that we're kind of talking about here. So one will have our main 616 or 199999, whatever the hell we want to call it this week, has those characters that we know and love. Then the other ones have the characters from their universe. And then that's how the multiversal war starts.
So
So then he could be telling the truth in Quantumania when he said, "Hey, I've killed a bunch of Avengers. Which one are you?" And so,
yeah. So do you think that multiversal war is actually going to be one Kang variant's army is the X-Men versus another Kang variant's army, which is the Avengers, versus another Kang variant's army, which is the Young Avengers, versus another Kang variant's army, which is the West Coast event. Like, and is that how we're getting freaking Deadpool and Hugh Jackman?
anything can happen.
And then at one point you're gonna have one Kang variant who's like, here's the Justice League.
No.
And it's gonna be Nick Cage's Superman too.
With the neon suit.
Yeah.
I love it. The theories are endless, but we have 2 episodes left to try and get it all figured out.
Mm-hmm. On a scale of pruned timelines, how many pruned timelines do you give this, as sociopathic as that analogy is?
Out of how many?
Well, there's an infinite amount
Infinite.
of pruned timelines, so that's a terrible analogy.
So let's go for this episode, infinity or infinite plus two.
I think out of 10 solid timelines, maybe I'd put this episode at a, like, this was a very solid 8. Um there were some questionable things in it that I had, like with the cinematography over continuity choices. that they had a power outage to create a cop out so magic could happen to prune Renslayer. Like there were a couple of those cop outs that I didn't sit 100% well with me. But all in all, this was an incredibly solid episode. Like there weren't any filler scenes. And also the fact that I don't get a piece of pie after watching this episode, I'm very disappointed at, and that's why it's an 8 timelines out of 10.
Now that I think about it, and again, I always hate to do this, looking back and thinking about how trying to poke holes in the writing and some things. But if at that point they were able to use their magic and stuff like that, then why did someone have to go in there with a throughput multiplier? Why can't they just use magic to do it? But again, you know, let's let's not write fan fiction and try to figure that out. That's just
But at the same time, like you can't not take that into account. Like I was telling you a few weeks ago, like one of my buddies was like, "Yeah, I don't get like Loki or anything." It's like he's not using any of his magic. I'm like, that's because magic doesn't exist in the TVA.
right.
And so it's now literally a switch they can toggle on and off. Like, enter your administrator credentials here, and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Mm-hmm.
That seems a little cop outy versus we're out of space time and your normal realm of physics, and that's why the Infinity Stones don't do anything. And that's why your magic doesn't do anything because you're not anchored in a plane of existence that where your powers happen.
Yeah. So, and that may have come from you know uh, how far along was the series mapped out, or not the series, the show. Well, yeah, shit, series. How far along was it mapped out? Was it mapped out for one season? They actually know it was going to be 2 seasons. Will it go into a third season? So maybe the writing in season one saying, "Hey, your magic doesn't work down here," which was great because then he had to be, for lack of a better term, human. He had to run everywhere, he had to walk everywhere. He couldn't just
Mhm.
magic. Um, but then we come into this season and it's like, okay, well, how are we gonna get X5 to turn? Okay, we have to have him enchanted. Well, we can't have him enchanted because we have this lock on that they can't use their magic. Okay, how can we get them to then use the magic? So, you kind of sort of write yourself into a corner there and then bring it back. But again, that type of stuff is stuff that I can just look past.
I mean, all in all, do I think that those split hairs are going to really make or break this series for me? No,
Right.
I don't. It's not. I acknowledge that yes, I am splitting hairs slightly on this, and I am looking for those holes to pick, but at the same time, I think it needs to be addressed a little bit. And I laid down the premise when we started this that we weren't going to pull our punches. And
That's
I'm
true.
standing by that.
That's true.
And where I mean it's a logical critique, I think, but it's not.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's the end of the MCU.
Right. Right. It's a critique that we can forget about it in a couple of days. This podcast is going to last forever, so it'll always come back. But we can forget about it.
Right.
It doesn't destroy the show. It doesn't take. It doesn't. You throw your hands up and now you can't enjoy the rest of it. It's just like, I see
Yeah.
what you guys did there. It ain't 100% great,
Not a huge
but
fan of it, but all right, we move on. Yeah, we're done. 100% agree. So, any final thoughts to add to season 2, episode 4 of Loki?
The only thought I have is I am totally looking forward to next Thursday, 9 p.m., to see where we pick up and where the hell this goes from here. Because the way we were left on that cliffhanger,
Ooh,
it's going to be good.
no. There's some stuff on the skillet.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Yeah, it's going to be a crazy breakdown, and I think this series is going to be looking back. I think when we're past this, looking back, this specific season of this series is going to be the keystone where it's like that's where everything started to make sense.
I agree. I agree. Because so far, again, we hate to do this, but not everything kind of sort of looks like it's adding up and connecting and being all there. But I think you're right. With this series, once we go forward, we'll be able to see a lot more into it.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing up is the Marvels, which, oh gosh, 2 weeks.
November 9th. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same day as the last episode of Loki. So that's perfect.
I am worried about my time for my showing of that.
Yeah.
An 8:30 showing. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay awake.
Oof. I got the early 5:30. Yeah.
But anyway, alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week for episode 4 review of season 2 of Loki. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, keep them to yourself because we don't care. I'm joking. Definitely write us in, hit us up on replying to the poll down below, and reach out to us and let us know what you think. We are not the end all be all.
Yeah.
This yet, not until Kevin Feige and Dave Filoni bring us up. But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week for episode 5.
All right, everyone. Good night. Thank you.